Today's scripture is Matthew 18:19 to 20. And I heard it said that this is the only place in the gospel where Jesus actually talks about what the church should be, or what talks about the church. And this is the New International Version. Again, truly I tell you that if two of you on earth agree about anything they ask for, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I with them. And now I'm going to pull up my stool here, because I don't stand well. There. I've been told that when I have a problem, I intellectualize it. I read about it and see if there's anything in there that applies to me. And so I'm going to share with you from the reading I've been doing about being a smaller church. These excerpts are the preface, introduction, and chapter 1 of Indispensable Guide for Smaller Churches by David R. Ray. He spent his career as a pastor in a number of small churches and as an intellectual and author and teacher teaching about smaller churches. So, and some of what I say will be direct quotes and some will be summaries. We'll begin with his race through history, focusing on smaller churches. I mean, this is a race through history. Throughout Christian history, smaller churches have been the norm and larger ones an anomaly, if not an aberration. For the first 300 years or so of church history, most Christian congregations were house churches. These house churches were not led by professionals with theological degrees, but by those members of the church who were identified and called forth to utilize their unique spiritual gifts for pastoral leadership, alongside others in the church who used their differing gifts for faithful living. After the Christian church was adopted and sanctioned by the Roman Empire, it became more and more institutionalized. While a few larger churches developed at the geographical crossroads, the norm remained small, intimate congregations meeting in homes, public rooms, and small buildings. Ministry gradually became more and more institutionalized as training programs became requirements and pastoral leaders were more formally credentialed. While isolated cathedral churches were established and prospered, there was nothing like what we've come to call megachurches until the last third of the 20th century. Thinking about cathedral churches takes us through the Middle Ages. Ray goes on to write about European settlements across North America that supported farmer preachers and circuit riders. And then he wrote, at the time of the Civil War, the average Protestant church had less than 100 members, but times were changing. Along with industrialization came ideas like larger is best. New, larger churches, quote, offered something for everyone, anonymity, a relaxed standard of membership, and prestige, unquote. By the turn of the 20th century, the majority of churches in the United States still had less than 150 members. As the ideal of the larger church took hold in the early decades of the 20th century, counter-reactions emerged. After World War II, the urban population shift from rural to urban areas increased. The parallel rise in denominationalism, which was something I hadn't even thought about before, resulted in pressure on congregations to expand to support the institutional costs of both the congregation and the denomination. One counter-reaction was the storefront church, small churches that did not own buildings, where people were known as people. Many people still feel more at home in small and modest-sized organizations, including churches. The most important thing to know about smaller churches, they are different from other sized churches, and they are the right size to be and to do what God calls a church to be and do. Throughout church history, all but a few congregations have been human scale, groupings in which every person mattered. So that's our history in a nutshell. Church history. Here are some other quotes from this part of the book. It's in the search for spiritual meaning, greater faithfulness, and addressing the needs of others that churches find their zest for life and hope for tomorrow. A smaller church has less than 100 attending worship. 2/3 of Protestant churches in the United States today are smaller churches, and I had not been aware of that. I just kind of thought we were kind of a tag in, but no. So then this Mr. Ray took an extended trip across the U.S. visiting smaller churches and noticing things that he found in successful smaller churches. And now this list I'm going to give it to you in a few minutes for you to think about and be aware that it's not the only way to do church. We have some other ideas. And our Mennonite history, you know, I don't think we ever had mega churches anywhere, not that I've heard of, but we've been smaller churches, as far as I know, for the most part. So here's what he found in these successful smaller churches. Number one, most, if not all, place a priority on their worship life and work to make it richer and fuller. 2, none are embarrassed by their smaller size. All of them take advantage of their size in the ways they are churched together. 3, there is a genuine sense of caring and being family or community in each place. 4, they really enjoy each other and have fun together. 5, there is a serious, even passionate commitment to mission and to addressing real needs and issues beyond the doors of the church. 6, these churches are not trying to be all things to all people. Rather, they have found what they do really well and are superb at doing it. 7, each has excellent pastoral leadership. The longer that leadership has been present, the more faithful and effective the congregation becomes. What is important in a pastor is the person's staying power, commitment, compatibility, and gifts. 8, there is heavy reliance on the laity and attention to equipping them and supporting them and giving them opportunity to be engaged in important life-giving ministry. 9, ministry and mission come first, and by God's grace and the people's generosity, there is always sufficient money and resources to meet their need. 10, in all they do, they are more concerned with being living churches than with being surviving institutions. 11, last and most importantly, in a great variety of ways, these communities are very serious about spiritual nurturing and faith development. Even the most socially active has a solid spiritual center. So that's our whirlwind tour of church history and the qualities of successful smaller churches that Ray visited. I know there are other ways of doing and being church that Ray did not address, but for now we will stick with his model. Please accept this list for your contemplation, and then I'm going to ask you what you think. Yes, please.